Do I wish they were taking COVID precautions? Yes. Am I still friends with them? Yes. Is that popular? No. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jacob. Welcome back to Sunday Yap Session, the show where every Sunday I hop on here and yap at you all about something with some sort of cohesive storyline to carry us all through. Sometimes we do better than others. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like because that helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to come yap with me every single Sunday, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I'm uploading at least once a week. Today we are sipping on a Liquid Death Psycho Cider. Shout out to my bestie Jacob for putting me onto these. Very good, very tasty. Y'all are gonna have to bear with me on this one. I just got back from my vacation the other day, so I'm still kind of tired, still kind of going through it, but I wanted to hop on and record for you all. Keep an eye out, by the way, for some very cool, exciting content. I'm very much so looking forward to editing all the content that I just made for my trip. If you didn't see on my community tab or in the last video I made, I went on a trip to Chicago recently, which was very, very fun. Hung out with two of my best friends, my boyfriend. It was a really, really good time. And I filmed so much content. I filmed like 32 gigabytes worth of content. So there will be some vlogs coming very soon. I think I'm gonna make the Chicago one just a big, long vlog that'll probably be like 30 minutes to an hour long or something like that, or I might split it up into two. If you have feelings about that, let me know below. And then I have a different vlog that I'm also going to upload when we were outside of Chicago doing some stuff. I don't know when all that content's gonna be done, so you'll see it when you see it. It's gonna take me a long time to edit, so we'll see. And speaking of my boyfriend and my friends, that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about today, which is COVID conscious dating and just community and all of that. I've been getting a lot of questions about COVID conscious dating, about how I go about all of that, about how me and my partner have met, if he is taking COVID precautions, all of that. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because it seems like something that people are interested in. I'm not exactly sure how I kind of want to navigate this conversation, so this one might be all over the place, so just kind of bear with me. I do want to give a disclaimer though, because I have been noticing, especially like in my comment sections and things like that, I think that in this COVID conscious space in particular, and I understand why, but sometimes I feel like there is like a lack of nuance and a lack of understanding that there is not one universal precaution that everybody is taking, and there is not one kind of universal lifestyle that people are living. So as I'm talking about things and going through things, you don't have to agree with everything I say. You don't have to you don't have to do anything I have to say. I'm not the boss of you. You do whatever you want. However, I will say, just keep that in mind. I'm not a perfect person. My partner is not a perfect person. Nobody is a perfect person, and we are all operating on different levels of precautions. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job, but I'm sure there are people who think that my precautions are not nearly enough and I should be doing way more. And of course, the level of precautions that I take do have nuance in the sense that I am not somebody who is living with pre-existing chronic illness. I'm not dealing with any disabilities that aren't very well accommodated for me, and I do not have long COVID. And as far as I know, I've never tested positive on a COVID test. So if I have had COVID, it's been asymptomatic. So I'm coming at this from like an extreme level of privilege in the grand scheme of things. So this dating is going to be completely different for someone who is living with like chronic illness, living with long COVID, things like that. So keep that in mind. This is just my little perspective as a one individual person. Someone I became mutuals with recently on TikTok made a video talking about like how they navigate dating as someone who is like actively dating and not in a committed relationship right now. So I'll link that below so you can see kind of a different perspective as well. And this is one where I definitely want to see y'all hop in the comments, hear everybody else's perspectives. I kind of started talking about this through a poll I did on my Instagram stories, and I asked people, okay, what is your current dating situation right now? Are you in a relationship? And if so, is your partner taking COVID precautions? Are they not, or are you single? I believe over 50% of the respondents said they're single, which makes sense, and maybe we'll get into that later. 45 or so percent of people said that their partner does take COVID precautions, and then there was like 5 to 7% kind of fluctuating that said their partner doesn't. I found that very interesting. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, we're going to talk about my relationship and kind of how I've navigated all this, because I think a lot of people are reaching out to me looking for advice or guidance on what to do. I don't know if I particularly have that, but I can tell you my experience and you can extrapolate what you want to do from that. So me and my boyfriend have been dating for about 2.5 years, and we met like 2 years and 8-ish months ago, which is a funny story in and of itself. We found out pretty quickly on in our relationship that both of us had recently broken up with our previous partners around the same time before we met. So we were like low-key each other's rebounds. That's a story for another day. But we met in the period, which I've talked about, I'll link below, where I was still taking COVID precautions. There's never been a time since the pandemic started where I haven't been taking COVID precautions, but this is in the period where I didn't know nearly as much and I was a lot more relaxed with the precautions than I would be now. And so as a result, I met my boyfriend on Grindr. And I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but you can extrapolate how that may have started and why that is not a thing that I would be doing now. Casual encounters amidst pandemic are something that I am not doing anymore at all. So that's how me and my boyfriend met. We were mostly just hanging out at my house, or my parents' house that I was living at the time. Every once in a while we would go out and do something, but it was pretty much just mostly hanging out at my house. So there wasn't really like a lot of risky behavior that we were doing. But of course, like things were a lot more relaxed than I am now, and the both of us are in regards to COVID precautions. Now, he is someone who has been masking since the beginning. He even had like custom masks made with like little artwork that he made with his friends and stuff like that. So I knew that he was someone who was masking. And I think when we first started dating, we were probably around the same level. It's also pretty easy for the both of us to be like COVID cautious because, especially at the time I was in, and then him as well, just kind of the way he is, we're both pretty much homebodies. He does a lot of PC gaming, console gaming, things like that, and like Baldur's Gate and Elden Ring all day and stuff like that. So he's not really someone who's like outside that much anyway. And then I had recently moved back to where I live now, and it was like 2022. So like there was still like not like lockdown. The state that I live in, there was never any lockdown at any point, I'm pretty sure. But like it was still in that kind of like early on period where people were really taking things seriously. So I wasn't out doing a super ton of stuff. But yeah, so that's how we met. Now, one piece of information that's going to be important later in this conversation is going into this relationship, which like I said, we were just kind of chilling, hanging out at first, and then like we both were catching feelings, and then we started dating like as a committed relationship later on. But going into this relationship, one of the things that I wanted to do in this relationship that I feel I have not been very strong in all of my like romantic relationships before is like being very honest, standing on my values. And not that I was like a liar or anything like that, but like we've talked about, I have a video that's like I'm a recovering people pleaser. I am someone who has like always been a people pleaser, always been a pushover, always kind of just like going with the flow, happy to do whatever. I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to inconvenience people, so on and so forth. And so going into this relationship, I wanted to be very firm on like what I want, what my values are, what I am looking for. So that was kind of the tone that was set in our relationship. Even when like me and my boyfriend like had been dating for a little bit and we were like, yes, we want to be in a committed relationship. We had like a sit down dinner in a restaurant, which is funny. I would never do that now. But we had like a sit down, I think it was like lunch or dinner. And I was like, okay, if we are going to do this, here are like my non-negotiables. Here is what I want. Basically just being like, here are my values. If we're going to be in a committed relationship, I need to make sure that you are in line with all of those. So that was kind of the tone that was set for our relationship. So we go on, we're dating for a little while, and then like I hit a point where I realized that the precautions that I had been taking were nowhere near enough for like the severity of COVID and what it is doing to people and what it's doing to the world. And that's kind of when like the switch flipped for me and I started taking like a lot more precautions that I feel are more appropriate for the situation that I'm in. I have a whole video talking about that. I'll link it below. And as a result, like I mentioned before, the tone had been set that like, here are my values. I want to be in line with our values, so on and so forth. So when I learned new information about COVID precautions, I talked to him about it. I said, hey, I've learned some things. I realized that there's some behaviors that we're doing that are not safe anymore. Some precautions that we have not been taking that we need to be taking. And like, not that it was like an overnight fix. Like we were both still kind of like learning and going through things. As I learned more information, started watching more like COVID cautious creators, getting into research studies, learning about like mask efficacy and transmission rates and all of that, and kind of all of like info that's like drilled into my head now. As I learned, I just talked to him about it. And I'd be like, hey, I learned this, and this. We should be doing this. I learned this, and this. We should be doing this. And one of the things I love about my boyfriend the most, he listens. If I tell him something, if like there is something that like I think needs to be changed or something we need to like make a decision with, or if I have like feedback, he takes it. Not that he just like does anything I say, but like he is very, very receptive and very open-minded. And if I ask him to do something, he will do it. So when it came to things like, hey, like we should not be eating in restaurants anymore because this is a high-risk situation, or like if we are going to events that are inside that are have like a lot of people in them, or just now it's like any event, but like if we're going to things that are crowded, like we absolutely need to be masking. He's like, okay, cool. So it was stuff like that where I'd kind of like had the precedent set that like I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be upfront, I am going to be clear on what my values are. So the kind of expectation was there. So when it came to like learning more about COVID and like taking more precautions, it wasn't really like an uphill battle at all. I had kind of set the tone and the energy for how I was going to be about how I feel about things. He was like, cool, I'm on board with that and I'm happy to do that. And it's kind of just been that from here on out. And I think as well, to be like in a relationship with me, it is very easy to be COVID conscious. I'm like directly connected to our local mask block. Before that, I had access to free masks through my job. So since we've been dating, I don't think he's ever had to pay for masks. Like I mentioned before too, we're both kind of homebodies, so we pretty much just hang out at my apartment. Every once in a while we go out and do stuff, and that's fun, and we take COVID precautions while doing that. Never really an issue. And we've been able to navigate this like pretty easy for the most part, I would say. And I think too with this, it's kind of like, it's never like a fixed state where we're kind of reaching an end goal for like what the precautions are. Because I'm learning new things every single day and I'm changing different precautions and da 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 da. Like for example, when I would go like visit my family and stuff like that, I typically would not necessarily wear a mask just because like not that many people there, it's very low risk. Now I wear one pretty much every time I go because I know that they're not taking nearly any COVID precautions. That's a high risk situation for me and that's something I'm not comfortable with. And so kind of like getting into like what I would do now and what I would do differently, I guess. I think that sort of mindset of like being firm on your values, being firm on what you want, and not being like lenient on that is going to be the key when it comes to COVID cautious dating. And like, of course, like I said, I'm coming at this from a privileged position. Like I am not someone who's in this circumstance. Me and my boyfriend have been dating for 2.5 years. Maybe if I was single and had been single for a while, I might be a little bit more flexible and I might feel differently about this. I don't think I would, especially when it comes to like dating and things like that. I had some feedback on Instagram talking about friendships and things like that. And I don't really even want to get into friendships because I think that's like an entirely different dynamic. But I am definitely like slightly more flexible with my friends than I am with my partner. But I am hanging out with my partner pretty much all the time. We're hanging out at least twice a week and he's the primary person I hang with. Largely because the COVID precautions are like a no-brainer and it is not difficult. No pushback. It's very much just like, yes, I'm on board. I'm down. So there isn't really like a lot of challenge there for me. But if I was single in like 2024 and I was trying to navigate this, like it would just kind of be just like a deal breaker for me if someone was not COVID conscious, unless they would be open to like talking about it and very rapidly changing their behavior, which I think for a lot of people is very difficult to do like an overnight switch where you're going from doing like no precautions at all to taking things very seriously and kind of dealing with like the social stigma and like the access and all of that. I don't think that's super realistic for a lot of people. So it would probably just be that if you are not COVID conscious, we just would not be dating and I would probably be single, which is why I was not surprised when I saw that like over 50% of the respondents were single. And I got a lot of personal messages like via DM of people that were like, I've just given up on dating entirely. That makes sense. And that's probably what I would do too, which is like unfortunate that that has to be the case. But I know like I was getting a lot of sentiment too from people. They also were just kind of tired of being the person who was like the COVID cautious friend, the person who was like educating people about it, the person who was like making sure that everybody's put on to all of these information and resources and things like that. And I can definitely like understand that too. It's definitely draining. That definitely is like a lot of like emotional labor to feel like you're kind of like dragging people into the future essentially, especially when it's coming from the perspective of like starting dating from the beginning, kind of in this time period now. I also got some feedback from people that were kind of in a similar boat as me. They had been with their partner for a while. They had kind of learned about more COVID cautious lifestyles and more of the precautions that we should be taking, so on and so forth. And then they kind of learned together and moved forward. Or some of them, they kind of learned, one of them moved forward and the relationship ended as a result of that. I also saw that a lot too. And I think that's kind of just like, unfortunately, that's just how it's gotta be. It's gotta be like either you're on board and you're ready to learn, or you're coming at this from the jump with the knowledge. Because just like for me, I just would not be interested in dating someone who is not taking active COVID precautions at or around the level that I am taking right now, just because that would be a high risk scenario for me. That would be against my values. That would be against what I think is ethical. And I don't mean to say that as a judgment, and I'm always trying to be very clear about this too. I understand that the large reason why people are not taking COVID precautions is because it has been very popularized through like federal, state, local levels of media, medical institutions, the government, so on and so forth, that this is over and it's not a big deal and oh, it's just kind of like a cold and you're sick for a few days and it's fine. I know that everybody has kind of been placated and been made to think that this is all over. And I always try to be cognizant of that because I never want to come off as like I am judging. But I think if there is going to be a time where you're going to be super discerning, super scrutinizing, and super like vetting of people, it is going to be a romantic relationship. I am friends with people that are not COVID conscious at all, that are, you know, outside all the time, flights booked, going international travel, all of that. And like, this is mostly like online friends and things like that. We don't hang out in person. And like, do I wish they were taking COVID precautions? Yes. Am I still friends with them? Yes. Is that popular? No. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and a lot of people, like, understandably so, in a similar way to how I see that in a relationship being like a boundary crossing and a no starter. I think a lot of people see that for every single relationship, which is understandable. For me, in relationships where I am not gonna likely be hanging out with a person in person anytime soon, it is more chill for me. Of course it is like upsetting, of course it is kind of disappointing, but I think that is, like I said, kind of just like the reality of the world we live in, and it doesn't stop me from talking about it with the friends that I am with. Basically, if you're friends with me, you're gonna hear about COVID precautions. I don't care. Like, if you're not into it, if you don't like it, like, you're gonna hear me talk about it. I talk about it on all of my social platforms, so on and so forth. It is a conversation we're gonna be having at some point. But getting back to romantic relationships and talking about that like 5 to 7% of people that said that they are dating people who are not taking COVID precautions, I want to talk about that a little bit because I found that really interesting. And if I'm being honest, when I was getting questions about like, oh, does your partner take COVID precautions? Like, does your partner kind of live the same lifestyle as you? My initial response was like, well, that's kind of a silly question. Like, yeah. If he wasn't, I wouldn't be dating him. And I think that is informed kind of what I was saying earlier about how this is just like a hard value for me. And in this relationship, I wanted to be someone who really stood by my values, was very like upfront, open, honest about how I feel about things, if I approve or disapprove of things. Basically just being open and transparent about my feelings in a radical way that I haven't really been before. Now, I think there is kind of like a segmentation that's happening here. There were a lot of people I was getting messages from that said that they had or were in the past, they learned that their partner was basically like lying to them and was not actually taking precautions, or like started but then kind of like begrudgingly like was doing it and then ended up just like not wanting to do it, or ended up just being something that like was kind of becoming like a big deal or a point of contention every single time. I think there's that camp. And then I think there were people that were like actively in relationships, maintained happy relationships where their partner was not taking COVID precautions, or like maybe did sometimes, but were not nearly to the capacity of the person that was reaching out to me. And that's the part that I find interesting. And if you're in that circumstance and you're comfortable being vulnerable below, I would love to hear some people talk about that and if that's your experience, because for me, that doesn't make any sense. If I'm being completely 100% honest, that makes no sense to me. That does not sound like fun. That does not sound like a relationship I would be interested in. And that's why I was so confused when I was getting this question, because it's like, if my partner wasn't doing this, why would I be dating him? And honestly, why would he be dating me too? Because I feel like that would be really annoying for them. Especially for someone like me who's talking about this like so often and so publicly on social media, and in a lot of ways, for better and for worse, has become like ingrained into my personality. I think that that would be like kind of miserable for someone too who like wasn't really into this at all and like either didn't care or like was like actively against taking COVID precautions. I don't think that that would be like a compatible lifestyle, so I'm really curious as to how people are navigating that. And I'm gonna assume that for some people it's kind of just like a pros and cons thing. Like I was mentioning kind of earlier, like this is a niche lifestyle. This is more of a niche belief in the grand scheme of things. And the dating pool of like COVID cautious people is particularly small for a wide variety of reasons, especially if you're a straight woman specifically, because I know that this community is overwhelmingly women, and in my experience, largely straight women. The dating pool is even smaller for y'all, I assume, in the grand scheme of things. I assume like the people that are in these situations, it is kind of like a pro con of like, hey, do I want to be in a relationship and like be loved and have that connection and have that intimacy at the sacrifice of like potentially getting COVID, or do I want to be sad, single, and alone? And not to say that being single is a inherently sad experience, but for some people, I think largely in like pop culture and things like that, being single is something people do not want to do. Most people want to be in like committed relationships, and that's something that they crave, especially at the season we're in now. I think we're like leading into cuffing season. I think it is like probably just like a pro con thing for some people. And again, this might just be because I'm not in this scenario, and maybe my behavior would be different if I was in this scenario. If I'm like pro conning it, I would rather be alive and maintain the level of health that I have and do my best to avoid getting COVID infection, long COVID, ME/CFS, POTS, so on and so forth, and the wide myriad of negative things that can come from getting a COVID infection. I would rather take all those mitigations and do my best to maintain the health I'm at than to like compromise that and be in a relationship. It's just like not worth it for me. And maybe it is for other people, and like that's, you do you live your life. I'm not here to like judge or anything like that. I'm just very genuinely curiously like kind of exploring this topic. And I think with that, that's where I want to open the floor and hear from you in the comments. So if this is something you are like interested in, something you're experiencing, everything we've talked about in the video today, if you're in a relationship with someone who is COVID cautious, if you are someone who's taking COVID precautions and is navigating dating right now, if you're someone who is COVID cautious and you're dating a partner who is not interested in it very much or at all, I would love to hear from you all below, because I think that like this is a community conversation that I think is going to be much more fruitful and provide much more to people if we're hearing a lot of perspective in the comments. Because from what you've heard from my experience, there's not really a lot of advice I can give other than like stick to your values, stick to your guns, and don't compromise, which is like good advice, and it's true, and it's definitely what I would recommend in relationships in general, this topic or any other topic. But like I said, I'm also coming at this from someone who like got my relationship in a time where I was less conscious than I was now, and I'm kind of like reaping the benefits of a negative decision. So like, I don't know. So this is definitely something where I want to hear lots of perspectives below. So if you have input, I would love to hear it below. below, and I will definitely like be in the comments and be engaged and things like that. Let's keep it cute, keep it nice. Like I said at the beginning, there are lots of different ways that people are navigating this, and I do not want to be someone who's like on here like judging people about how they live their lives and things like that. I'm never gonna be like quiet or like dismissing myself about what I think people should be doing or the precautions that people should be taking, but I'm never gonna get on here and like personally attack people or like make harsh judgments or things like that. So let's keep it cute in the comments, especially in a conversation where we're inviting people to like share their intimate lived experiences about their romantic lives. Let's keep it cute, let's keep it nice, let's be respectful in the comments. And if you disagree with me in the comments, totally cool with that too. Like I've said in this video and many others, I am never gonna hop on here and be like, I am right, I am perfect, my takes are amazing, and there's nothing wrong that I've ever said. I am sure there are things I've said and done in this video and like talking about my life experiences and things like that a lot of y'all disagree with, and that's totally cool. And if you have that perspective, I would love to hear that below as well. So with that, I'm gonna hop off here and hopefully see you all in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said at the beginning, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like because that helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to come yap with me every single Sunday, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I upload at least once a week and sometimes more. Hope to see you all in the next video, and I will catch you all later.